Can I have you say and spell your name, please?
Sure, I'm John Courage, City Councilman, District 9. It's spelled C-O-U-R-A-G-E.
And not just a councilman now, candidate for mayor.
Absolutely.
Right. So start off, why are you running?
Well, you know, I've lived in this community a long time, and I've really devoted my life to public service. I can go all the way back to when I went into the military, served in the Air Force for 4 years. And when I got out here in San Antonio, my first job was working at St. Peter's and St. Joseph Children's Home, working with children who have been taken away from their families. And then I went on to work for Bexar County Mental Health Mental Retardation Center. And eventually, I served as a teacher in the heart of San Antonio for 25 years in both public schools and parochial schools, and taught a lot of special education, special needs students. And so, my really lifetime commitment has been doing things for people in our community. And I was about ready to retire in 2017 when my wife and my neighbors convinced me that I should run and serve as city councilman. And so I've been serving now for 7 years. And I feel like I've done a really good job in representing the needs and the concerns and the interests of people in my district. And over the last few years, people have been asking me to continue to serve. They knew my term was going to be running out, and asked me to run for mayor. And when I first ran for council, 7.5 years ago, I really didn't think I'd ever run for mayor. But the more I've served and the more I've enjoyed serving and feel like I've been doing what people expect me to do, the more I feel like I still have more to offer. And that's why I'm running for mayor. I think that I offer common sense and steady leadership and experience. And I think all of those are important ingredients in working with city government and city council to keep the city going in a good direction for everybody.
So why now? You mentioned people have been asking you to run. When we were speaking beforehand, you said even from your first to second term. So why did you decide to run now? Was it just the opportunity of an open seat?
Yeah, I believe that's right. And also, I felt that Mayor Nirenberg was doing a reasonably good job. I never agreed with him 100% on everything that he might have supported or proposed, but I agreed with him quite a bit. And I always had an opportunity to sit down and talk with him to determine how can we work together. And I realized that's what you need to have as a mayor. You need to be able to work together with other council members. And yes, this is the right opportunity since he's termed out. And again, with the encouragement of my family and people in the community, I recognize that I am prepared and ready to step in as mayor in the future, and so that's why I'm doing it.
But why do you think you're the person for the job? You may be ready, but this is going to likely be a broad field of candidates.
Sure.
What's your pitch to voters on why they should select you?
Well, I'll tell you, my belief is that I've got common sense, and that's how I've always voted. I've tried to make sure I listen to everybody. I've told people from the beginning when I was elected to council, a council person may be elected from one district, but a council person really represents the entire city, because every decision we make downtown at City Hall, one way or another, affects the lives of everybody in the community. And so, although I've been the councilman for District 9, I've really been a councilman for everybody in every part of this community. And so I just feel it's a natural extension of what I've done, the decisions I've made, the way I would continue to work with everybody in the community.
And what do you see the mayor's role as? You said, council person represents everybody. It's also the mayor's role. And with the system of government we have, it's generally city manager led. The bureaucracy is kind of handling the day-to-day. A lot of the things that come before council are things that have been hammered out in detail by the professionals on the city staff. Behind closed doors, they bring it forward. To some people, it seems like a rubber stamp. Others say, well, we're the policy makers. To you, what is the mayor's role in San Antonio's style of government?
I think the mayor's role is to be the facilitator and the collaborator with both the city staff, the city manager's staff, all of the leadership team that he has and the department heads, and with all the council members. As a council member for years, I always felt comfortable in talking with the professionals who headed up every department, or even the people below them that were working on specific projects in my district or other parts of the city. I always felt comfortable in working with them, sharing my thoughts and ideas. And many times I felt that some of the ideas and the thoughts and the direction I would like to see different programs or processes go in were incorporated into a lot of the final decisions that were, or recommendations that were presented to City Council. And at the same time, I felt very comfortable in talking with many of the council members when maybe we had a slightly different view of things, just to let them know where I was coming from and how I felt this would be a good way to go. And I just had a good working relationship, and I think that's the role of the mayor, to develop those continuing successful working relationships with the city staff and with the council members. And I've found that the council really has put in a lot of good suggestions and ideas and offered good direction that many, many times the city staff, the city manager's team have accepted as, you know what, that's a good idea. Let's work that in to what we're doing. And that way, I think we've been able to be very coherent as a city council when things come forward, because we've had that input. We can't tell the city staff what to do, but we certainly can let them know how we think or what we're hearing from our council district and ask them to incorporate some of that into their planning, and I think they do. And I think that's a strong position that the mayor has used as the mayor of the city, and that I think any future mayor needs to do. It's developing the cooperation and the collaboration between all the different departments and all different council members.
Speaking of collaboration, cooperation, you're often considered, a more liberal or progressive candidate in a more conservative district. A little bit of, an anachronism there. So I was wondering, how do you navigate that? How do you think that helps you with the mayor's race, or what does that speak to?
From the moment I was elected, and even before that, when I talked to people, I firmly believe there is not a Republican or a Democratic or a conservative or a liberal way to fill a pothole or to replace a street light or to make sure your trash gets picked up. And I have focused on what people have told me are their needs and their concerns on their street, in their neighborhood, in their part of District 9, or in their part of the city. I think the most important thing is to listen, and then the mayor certainly needs to be a listener as well to what the community is saying. And you really need to reach out as a listener too, though, because you hear a lot of voices. Many times they represent certain interests, but they may not represent everybody. And so as much as you can as a mayor, you need to be listening to as much information as you can bring in to your thought process. I did that as a councilman. I would have to do that on a much broader basis as the mayor for 1.5 million people. But I'm prepared to do that.
Okay. Looking back on your 7 years, going into the 8th, what do you think stands out on your record? As you mentioned, you've tried to be collaborative with people, which means generally you've been towards the center of most of the hotter city debates, which I think could, make it harder for people to figure out what exactly do you stand for. So are there issues that you would point to on your record to tell voters, that's who I am, that's what I stand for?
I think that we need to understand that in our electoral system today, there seems to be a lot of diversification, and there seems to be a lot of extremes. And so as much as anyone can bring the extremes and the diverse thoughts together and find things that we can agree on, we may not agree on everything, but if we can find the most common issues that we can agree on and move forward with, that should be the direction that we move in. There's always going to be possibly exceptions. Probably an example is what's been going on in the Middle East right now between Israel and Hamas. And I've taken a stand very strongly that It is not the city's role to determine how we should be involved in international conflicts like that. And it doesn't please many people who feel that there should be more done to support Palestine. It doesn't really please a lot of people who feel there should be more support for Israel. But I think it really reflects the majority of the people in this community who want us to focus on what are our daily needs, what are our weekly needs, because the role of city government is first and foremost to protect our citizens, keep them safe, and then help them have jobs and housing and utilities and education and a future for their family. And when we get too divided on issues, when we end up following extreme sides, one or the other, we end up creating more diversity and more difficulty in bringing people together for the common interest that we share.
Okay. So what's your vision for San Antonio? Because it can't just be, I want to bring everybody together. Do you have, where is it you want to lead this city as mayor?
Well, I think that we've established some reasonable building blocks in our city, but I think we need to grow those. For example, a few years ago, we decided to invest in helping create more housing. We also decided to put together a training program to better educate people in our community. We've invested more in public health programs in this city over the last few years. I think all of those are the kinds of things that benefit more people than anybody else. But first and foremost, public safety is something that I'm committed to, and I want to see us continue to hire the additional police officers that we committed to about 1.5 years ago. We committed to improving the size of the police force by 15%. We added 100 police officers this year. We want to add another 260 police officers, and I believe the sooner we add them, the better. There's some thoughts that because of our budget situation, looking like it may not be as rosy as we hoped it would be, that we may want to prolong that period of hiring police officers. But I disagree. Another issue is providing better jobs, higher paying jobs for the city. And I think the mayor has an opportunity to be a better spokesperson, a better salesperson, to hold the megaphone to the public and to the nation about what San Antonio has to offer and attract more businesses that are going to give us better paying jobs available for everybody. Another big issue we're looking at is housing, and I think that based on the bond issue that we passed a couple of years ago, $150 million towards housing, we're making a start. But the housing situation in San Antonio is critical. There are thousands of people struggling to find an affordable place to live or stay in those places that they may afford today. We need to make a bigger investment in partnering with the private sector and nonprofit organizations to continue to develop more housing across the spectrum of housing, but particularly in workforce housing and affordable housing. And so that's something else I'd like to see us work on. And we need to do more to promote public education in general. We've got pre-K for SA, which is doing great things. We have our community colleges that are doing wonderful things in the city. We've got Cafe College, a city program that helps young people get into college. So we're helping at the beginning, we're helping at the end. I think we need to do more help in the middle. And so I'd like to see us try and go out and recruit more people to become tutors in the public school system, particularly 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, where if students get behind in those grades, they tend to stay behind, which is something I experienced as a teacher for a long time. I would love to recruit 10,000 volunteers to go into the schools with the cooperation of the school districts and help those children lift up their math and reading levels to where they'll continue to succeed in school. And there's a unique thing we can do. The city has a program for senior citizens that if they volunteer in programs that the city agrees to, we can actually give them a deduction on their property taxes. So, I think that could be a win-win situation going forward.
Understanding is that has already gone into place. That was
Right.
something put forward by Councilwoman Castillo. Yes.
Right. And I say we want to expand that for the schools. and try and recruit more people to volunteer for that. You know, and another big concern I have is we've got 1 million people projected to move into this city in the next 25 or 30 years. So that means we need to be able to provide the protection, we need to be able to provide the jobs, we need to be able to provide the housing, we need to be able to be sure that they will have utilities, water, and electricity. Those are all challenges that this city continues to face, like many others do in Texas and around the country. And so we need to have the leadership that has been looking at these things and understands a direction we need to be going. I served as the chairman of the Mayor's Commission on Utilities. I served on the audit committee as chair. I was a member of the San Antonio Housing Trust working on building more housing. I'm the only councilman who's ever gone to a CPS Energy meeting or a SAWS board meeting or has gone to a planning commission meeting. I actually go to those meetings and have, so that I understand what's going on in the background that makes these things function. And I think that has just prepared me with more insight into how the city government is working or should work and what we need to do to keep it working in the right direction.
Well, apart from the public school tutor thing, which I'd like to come back to, many of the things you listed, affordable housing, some of the education, the workforce training, the tax credit, these are things that have been ongoing. So what is it that you would say you bring that's new? Or are you promising a continuation of where we're going?
Yeah, I think that that's fair to say that I want to continue building on what we've started to make sure they work, to make sure they're successful. Too many times, programs and projects have started in the past, and one of the problems was you had council members who served 2-year terms, maybe only 2 of them in the past, or now even 4 2-year terms, but sometimes they don't get reelected, new people come in, ideas change, and we don't seem to follow through and continue with those or some of those projects that we've started. And I think it's important to build on those building blocks. Now, I do have a few new things that I've incorporated into my district that I'd want to bring forward to the city. One thing I've done that no councilman has ever done is look at the budget that I receive from the city for all the services and everything. And I've set aside $1.5 million out of that budget and said to the people in my district, you tell me what are the projects you think we need to do in our community. And you tell me what they are, we'll research them, we'll put a price tag on them, and then we'll let you and your neighbors prioritize which ones you want to have done, and we let the people vote on those issues. We've done that 3 times. We've done a couple of dozen projects that the people in the community have decided that's how I want my tax money spent, not how a bureaucrat or a city staffer thinks it should be spent. I really think that that's more of what the city needs to do in getting more public input, give the public more to say about what their priorities are in different parts of the city for spending. I've done that. I'd like to see that continue. Another thing I've done is I've gone ahead and invited people to travel around the city with me and go see different city departments in action, seeing the partnership we have with different nonprofits and with different agencies. We've gone to, recently we went to Port San Antonio. I took a group of people from the Northside Chamber and other cities from District 9. And we toured Boeing Manufacturing. We toured the engine company that's creating engines out there. We looked at the museum out there that they have. I wanted people to see what our tax dollars are doing, what our partnerships are valued at. We've gone to the usual places like Animal Care Services, and we've gone to the Food Bank, and we've gone to Haven for Hope, and we've gone to the Fire Academy, we've gone to the Police Academy. I have taken people from my district into the community to understand where their tax dollars are going and what the partnership is that the city has with a lot of these nonprofits. I want to continue to see that, and I think we need to grow the ability for the community to understand what's going on and getting out there and see more of that. I did it in a district. I think we can do it more as a city. I've also, as you know, promoted the idea that I want people's homes to be safer. And if they have weapons in their home that they no longer want, that they don't think they need, or that makes them feel unsafe, we've created an opportunity for them to go ahead and get rid of those guns in a safe manner. Those weapons would never be used for anything like someone being injured or a crime being committed or somebody being intimidated with a weapon in that home. It was very successful. We're going to be doing it again. We're going to be doing it again this coming November. We took over 900 weapons out of people's homes safely. It's all voluntary. It's people who don't want these anymore. And I think that that's the point of view that a city should have, is helping people overcome some of those concerns that they may have about guns in their homes, in their family, in their community. And that's something I'd like the city to continue to do, and I'd like to be an advocate for. It's not a Second Amendment issue. It's totally voluntary. But a lot of people sometimes inherit weapons from deceased family members, or they may have used them years ago when they were in their prime hunting, and now they don't do that anymore, and they recognize having something around the house when the grandkids come by may not be safe anymore. So, you know, these are some of the ideas that went behind that weapons exchange program. There's another suggestion I'm working on. A lot of people in San Antonio are struggling with their medical costs. And medical bankruptcy is a big issue around the country, and it is here in Texas, and it is here in San Antonio. So we're working with a program that is going to help us relieve medical debt for people in this community. I'll be introducing that this year. It's something I think I'd like to see the city take on. For example, if I can raise $100,000 to commit to this nonprofit nationwide organization, they believe they can help relieve between $7 and $8 million worth, or $7 and $10 million worth of medical debt for people who live in this city. Those are some of the things I've looked at from outside of the box that I brought in. Another one was the safe baby devices that we're going to be employing in fire stations around this city, so that no young woman who is struggling in a crisis with a child will abandon that child in a dumpster or leave it someplace neglected. Again, ideas sometimes that I hear from reading or discussing or just educating myself, that I think this is something we can bring to San Antonio. Leadership isn't always creating something that you think. It's really being able to identify things that are around this nation and that are around this state and that are around this city that can be put to good use. And that's just common sense leadership.
Okay. So you've mentioned getting into education more. You just mentioned medical debt. Mm-hmm. You also acknowledge the city is facing potential budget shortfall.
Absolutely.
So some of these ideas could seem like mission creep, so to speak, at a time when the city's trying to cover what it's already covering. So do you think it's appropriate to try to spread the city into new areas? One, based on just the principle of what city government does. You've already mentioned there are things the city doesn't need to be involved in, such as foreign conflicts, and
right.
Speaking up about that. But you've got the practical aspect of you're facing a potential budget shortfall, and every new idea comes with a new price tag.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and I'm not saying that all of these ideas would be, should be, or can be introduced this year, this budget cycle, or the next budget cycle. Some may be able to. For example, the weapon exchange, that came from money that was donated, and we can do that again. Also, I understand that we are facing a financial challenge on this upcoming budget. And I would be in agreement with anybody who says you can't keep adding on. So we need to take a real close look at what this budget is going to look like, and the city staff is working on that right now. But when we talk about long-term, 2 or 3 years down the line, I think it's worth considering what else can we do to better the lives of people in our community, how far can we go? You know, recruiting thousands of people to go into the schools and offering them a tax break will have an effect, not on this year's budget, maybe a little bit on the next year, maybe a little bit more after that, but the value that you get for helping these children attain the educational level they need to be at pays us back, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. But also another issue that I think is important is that we need to really get back to basics with our budget. So as much as I think that there are great ideas that can be introduced down the line, that there are good opportunities for expanding services to people in this city, I recognize we need to make sure that our government is functioning the right way. And by back to basics, I'm one of the proponents of saying that we really ought to look at zero-based budgeting, starting from scratch with the budget for every department in the city, and help them build up what they have to do, what we're committed to do, what is projected for the best growth of the city, and then build those budgets up to where they need to be. And if they need to be where they may be next year, or if they need to be greater, then we need to be able to address that. But I think that there are a lot of projects and programs that may have been initiated 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago before I got on council. I think they're always worth looking at again. Are they still relevant? Does the community still want them? Are they still serving the purpose that they were intended? And if not, how do we change it? Do we modify them? Do we do away with them? Do we incorporate those into other projects? And will that create more financial stability and a better operation for our city government? It's not something we can just do tomorrow. I think that takes a lot of heavy city planning, which is why I recommended that it really not be initiated until the 2027 fiscal year. We're getting ready for 2025. We know that's going to be a challenging year. But we can start saying, when we approach the 2026 budget, how do we start to plan for a zero-based budget? What will the staff need to look at come the planning for the 2027 budget? And even now, having them look at programs and projects, with a clear eye of the relevance that they may have today or may have come the 2027 budget, so that we do get back to the basics that this city needs to provide for its citizens.
What do you think is the biggest issue facing San Antonio right now?
I'm really worried about housing. Housing costs are going up, which affects a lot of people who can't find an affordable place to live, or people who were in something that was affordable is finding a challenge staying there because property values are going up, the taxes are going up, insurance is going up on homes. And so I think housing is really one of the biggest concerns that the city needs to be more involved in addressing. Some of those things are out of our hands because the state legislature controls things like the taxing situation. They've made some steps to try and help lower taxes, but they also have control over property values. For example, one thing that I'm concerned about is the property values rules that exist today say that properties don't need to be revalued every year, but they must be revalued no more than every 3 years. So I would love to see the Bear Appraisal District say, we're not going to revalue the properties next year. We'll wait another year. And that way we'll put off any growth that people may have to pay for the increased value of their property. And maybe we wait 2 years because it only has to be revalued according to state law every 3 years. And that could help a lot of people, although, you got to educate them to say, well, you're getting relief this year, but we can't guarantee that you'll get that same relief next year. But at the same time, if the city devotes more energy to trying to help work with public and private and nonprofit organizations to develop more continuing affordable housing, I think that should be a direction we need to consider going in. I think it'll help the community.
All right, sir. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time today.
Sure.
Is there anything else you want to close out on?
I understand what elections are like, and so I have no worry about who runs and why they're running. I'm standing out there on my own. I hope people will evaluate me on my performance, on what I have to say. I hope they ask me the kind of questions they need to hear my answers to understand if I'm the right person to serve them. But I'm ready. I feel like I'm capable. Like I said, I offer common sense and uncommon courage to lead this city going forward.